I'm Mike Knopfwood, the 28-year-old businessman. I work for a pretty big and famous company in my hometown. I'm part of the sales team, and there's a business drinking party almost every night. The clients seemed to really like the place I chose for the gathering, so I think it was successful. I felt a sigh of relief. My boss is whispering something to our CO. Looks like he's planning for the next place. Probably they're going to a fancy place with attractive ladies along with our client CEO. I guess these regular employees are calling it quits here. We held taxes for the harems to send them off. Our tipsy CEOs seem to be in high spirits. We made sure nothing was left behind with seniors, and then us regular employees dispersed. My colleagues were heading off to a bar, but I'm not much of a drinker. Despite the invite, I declined and decided to head home early. I wanted to enjoy my only hobby, gaming, when I got home. As I was excitedly heading home, I heard a dispute in a side alley off the main street. Normally I ignore it, but I stopped in my tracks when I heard a young woman's voice. Squinting into the dark alley, I could see a girl about college-aged and a man about my age arguing about something. The man seemed to be forcing the girl, and she was clearly uncomfortable. "Hey, stop that." She tried to keep her voice down, but it was clear she was rejecting him. The man was holding her arm, seemingly trying to forcefully take her somewhere. The girl appeared to be about the same age as my younger sister. "Hey, maybe you shouldn't be forcing her like that." I called out quietly towards the back of the alley. The man turned around and glared at me. From just one glance, I could tell he was wearing a well-tailored suit. His tie is designer-made. His leather shoes are nicely polished. He seems like a rich kid. "Back off. You're out of your league, man." Quite a mouth on him for a privileged kid. Maybe he's a rich Brad gone bad. I cynically stepped into the alley. The humidity instantly rises above the level of the main street. It's probably damp hair from the air conditioners attached to both sides of the buildings, but she seems uncomfortable, and you're acting like a thug, so I can't just ignore this. While saying that, I nonchalantly grab his hand, shielding the girl behind me. Talking circles around people is something I'm good at. "Hey Ginny, do you know this guy?" The man yells as he tries to violently grab the shoulder of the girl behind me. I shield her, making sure his hand doesn't reach her. He clicks his tongue and then attacked with a pretty heavy punch. I absolutely hate violence. I was blown to the wall of the building, hitting my back hard. I taste iron in my mouth. The man looks down at me, now slumped against the building wall. There's a vulgar grin on his face. These kinds of guys never stop at one punch. He's the type who gets excited by the violence he inflicts. Just as I try to escape, a kick to my stomach makes me groan. See, just as I thought, I nearly laugh at how well I've rated him. Just as the man clenches his fist again, the girl thrusts her smartphone screen in his face. "If you don't stop, I'm calling the police. Are you planning to make your dad clean up the mess again?" She says this with a voice so cold, it's like she's mocking him. Maybe he didn't believe she'd actually call the police, because his fist clenches tighter. Without hesitation, she starts using her smartphone. From the speakerphone, you can hear the voice of a police officer answering a 911 call. He keeps asking, "What's your emergency?" The man lowers the fist he'd raised and clicks his tongue. "Don't run, Jenny." The man says this and runs off down the alley. She ends the call only after making sure he's gone. "We should move before the police arrive. You don't want any more trouble, right?" She grabs my arm to help me up, and then lends me her shoulder as I wobble. Her side profile is a real beauty, but with a hint of darkness, a pure yet mysterious beauty. By the time we reach a bench in a park, away from the alley. We're both sweating. She made me sit on the bench and buys a couple of bottles of water from a vending machine. She gave me one and uses the other to dampen her handkerchief and gently wipes my face. It burns my mouth with the water she gave me, but I can still taste iron. It looks like I've cut the inside of my mouth quite a bit. We need to get you to a hospital. You're bleeding. She says this with a worried look while holding the cold handkerchief to my wounds. I'm fine. It's not as painful as it looks. Are you hurt anywhere? In my words, she opens her eyes wide in surprise, then tilting her head slightly, she looks at me in puzzlement. Did I say something strange? Just as I was about to open my mouth again, her slender hand moved swiftly. Before I knew it, my suit jacket was whisked away. Excuse me, suddenly stripped of my jacket, I was flustered. I'll get it cleaned and return it. I'm sorry, but can you please provide your contact details? She said this in a polite but firm tone. She quickly tossed over items that were in the pocket. When she found a business card holder in an inner pocket, she smiled. I'll take a business card if you don't mind. Pardon me. She promptly pulled out a card, and she tossed it over to me. She took the business card, pausing for a moment. I'll be in touch. A call from a college girl must be a nightmare. Give me your number. It seemed like I had run into a charming thief. As I told her my number, she repeated it without taking a note. She then introduced herself as Guinea Garcia. Just as I was about to say that the cleaning wasn't necessary, my phone started ringing. The caller ID prominently displayed my boss's name. The message was urgent. The CEO of a client company was drunk, and I was needed for help. Sorry, I got some work to do. I left her in the park as I rushed off. It was regrettable, but I had no choice. She watched me silently from within the park until I hailed a taxi and got in. A week later, I received a call from the charming thief during my lunch break. She must have timed it to catch me on my break. I didn't recognize the number, but I had a hunch it might be her. The cleaning is done. So when can we meet? She asked. I told her I would be free after work tomorrow. I'll send you the meeting place via text, and she hung up the call. The meeting place she texted was a restaurant I'm not familiar with. Her message sighed as a token of my appreciation. Let's have a meal. It's a restaurant picked by a college student, so it probably won't be anything too fancy. I prepared a bit of extra cash in my wallet and headed to the designated restaurant the next day. And now I'm scared. The restaurant is not for students, and I was led to a private room hidden behind a concealed door. Frozen in place, I was sitting rigidly when she arrived a little late. I'm sorry for making you wait, she apologized, bowing her head. I barely managed to respond with a weak, it's fine. She sat down on the pulled-out chair like usual and ordered the chef's recommended course. Dishes that I've never tasted before appeared, delighting both my eyes and palate. Like magic, drinks were refilled at just the right timing, and the friendly waiter helped to ease my tension. The final dessert was served in front of me, and cheese was placed before her. Being a lover of sweet things, it was the best cake I've ever had in my life. You're not having the cake? I don't like sweets, she admitted, her face darkening a bit. I used to be fine with it, she added with a smile. Taste changes, we grow, and not every girl in the world loves cake. I simply responded, shrugging it off at the time. During the meal, we had all sorts of conversations. The guy who had bothered her turned out to be her fiancé, Jenny. She talked about marrying right after graduating from college, but she didn't seem happy about it. I could easily tell something was going on. Aren't you too young to be getting married already? I blurted out. Jenny merely smiled awkwardly in response to my question, not saying a word. She seemed resigned, and her smile could also be interpreted as a knowing smirk. In just 2.5 hours, I found myself wanting to know more about her. When I reached for my card to tackle the bill I was dreading, I was told it had already been paid. "It's on me as you helped me," she said with a smile, handing me my freshly cleaned jacket. As we left the restaurant, she quickly said goodbye and began to leave. "Wait, I have a proposal," I blurted out, desperately wanting to keep her from leaving. Upon being called, Christine slowly turned around. The sight of her looking straight at me was breathtakingly beautiful. "If you get married soon, let's do the things you won't be able to do once you're married," I said. She looked surprised at my words, her eyes widening. It was a bold proposal, but it was all I could think of. Jenny, who is set to marry that guy right after graduation, and clearly it wasn't a marriage she wanted, so I thought, why not enjoy her freedom until she gets married? I wanted to see her smiling, preferably by my side. "What a proposal," she said, her voice filled with a hint of disbelief. Suddenly, I felt embarrassed. When I timidly asked, "So is it a no-go?" Ginny shook her head. "Where are you taking me for our fun day out?" she asked with excitement. I was relieved to see her anticipation. "Well, let's start planning then," I said, and she nodded in agreement. And just like that, she smoothly linked her arm with mine. Thus began our little game of playing lovers. From that day, Jenny and I went on many dates in various places. There was no rule as to who should ask, but it was always me inviting and her accepting. There were a lot of things I learned from our numerous dates. She was more of a sheltered lady than I had imagined. She was too excited with the aquarium and being childish as she wanted to touch penguins. At the zoo, she fussed about wanting to take home a baby lion. During a horse riding, Jenny, an experienced rider, left me behind and ran into the forest. I remember feeling awkward when she showed up in a summer dress for the county fair. I was forced to buy a cotton candy that was 3 times the size of her face, but she remembered that she hated sweet things, which made me burst into laughter. Her persona was completely different from when we first met, and I was constantly surprised. That day, we went to a solo exhibition by a female woodcarver who specializes in animal carvings. She enjoyed sitting on a life-sized orangutan carving and playing with the kids. I found the scene somewhat heartwarming and watched while leaning against the wall. "Oh, teacher, hello." Suddenly I turned toward the sound. There was a familiar-faced boy grinning at me. "Hey, are you here with your family?" I noticed a girl holding his hand. He nodded with a hearty smile. "You're a teacher," out of nowhere, Jenny, who had returned, asked with curiosity. "Oh, are you the teacher's girlfriend?" "He's a boxing teacher," the boy responded clearly to Ginny's question. "In fact, I'm good at boxing, and I teach grade school kids at the gym run by an old college." Ginny stared at me in surprise, learning this new side of me she wasn't aware of. It was quite embarrassing being stared at so intently. Ginny watched the boy energetically say goodbye and run back to his parents. "You could have hid back, but you didn't," she murmured to herself. I knew she was talking about the time when we first met. "Why didn't you get back?" she asked, suddenly serious. Taken aback, I looked at Rachel. Her face was very serious. "I just don't like hitting people," I confessed. It may have sounded contradictory, but that was how I truly felt. I knew the pain of hitting someone and being hit. That's why I didn't like hitting people. I think this hesitation was the reason I was always the runner-up. During my school days, I was a runner-up in every competition. I could never fully commit to winning. Every time I came in second place, I felt sorry for my family who was cheering for me. Would you say the same thing even when you absolutely need to hit back? She asked in a cold voice, reminding me of when we first met. I felt a chasm between Jenny and me unbridgeable, as if we were standing on opposite cliffs overlooking a deep valley. I couldn't answer her question. Ever since our date at the art show, I had lost contact with Jenny. A week had passed. There was no response to my calls or emails. She used to pick up on the first ring. I was worried that something might have happened. Perhaps I had been written off because I couldn't answer a question. At the time, I was anxious to see her again. Just as I was about to try to contact her again, a colleague called out to me. He delivered a message that the director wanted me in his office. I hadn't made any mistakes at work. I put on the jacket I had taken off and knocked on the door to the boss's office. I was told in a low voice to come in. The boss's office, where the boss and the director and the CEO of the client company and one more person, the man who had been bothering Jenny, was sitting back on the sofa. "I'm disappointed in you trying to steal my nephew's fiancée," said the boss. So, the man who was bothering Jenny was the boss's nephew. The client company CEO also looked stern. As I stood there dumbfounded, the boss explained, Jenny was the daughter of a client company CEO and the boss's nephew's fiancée. He emphasized that their marriage was necessary to strengthen the partnership. It seems like they were insisting on a marriage to expand their companies. I was taken aback, wondering what they were talking about. So in short, the CEO's nephew desperately wants her, and he got the company involved, right? The truth just slipped out of my mouth. I felt the temperature in the CEO's office rise dramatically. The CEO of our client company was a person of no great reputation. I heard that originally the current CEO's brother was the CEO, but he was kicked out and the current CEO took his seat. He had mistresses here and there and ran the company recklessly, or so the rumours went. That's enough. I want you to quit the company. We can't afford to keep a thief cat in the company. I'm disgusted by the CEO's ridiculous comment. Next to that CEO, the CEO of the client company is nodding deeply. He says he can't do business with a company where thief cats are present. Personal life and work are separate matters. Annoyed at the nephew grinning at me, I say to the boss, I don't want to give up on myself who has been working hard till now here. I thought this is the time to become desperate. I thought I'm fed up with giving up on Guinea and my job. I'm not interested in your opinion. This is my company, and I don't need you. The CEO points to the exit door and tells me to leave. At that moment, the door he pointed at is opened without a knock. What the hell? We're having an important conversation. The CEO immediately yells at the person who opened the door. However, the next moment, everyone in the CEO's office was stunned and couldn't move. It's been a while, Uncle. My father sends his regards, Jenny said to the CEO without a smile. The boss's nephew, my fiancé, is stunned. Was it you, Uncle, who was secretly sniffing around me, or was it my fiancé? It wasn't until Jenny told me that I realized. The CEOs found out about Jenny and my relationship because someone was sniffing around us. Probably someone in this room hired a detective and investigated, and I was caught. You're also to blame, meeting secretly with Mike. It's irresponsible behavior while engaged. Guinea snorts at the CEO's words. It was clear that she was looking down on everyone except me. The CEO of the client company warns Jenny, don't meddle. Guinea looks at me and smiles a little. I'll handle this. When Jenny declared that to me, she threw a bundle of documents at the client company's CEO. You're fired, CEO Williams. Jenny said to CEO Williams with cold, icy eyes. CEO Williams, flustered, flips through the documents thrown at him. With each page he turns, his face turns paler. My brother is the CEO from today, Ginny informs her fiancé. Incredible. Ginny conspired with a real brother and took over their father's company, investing in her father's company from her company and gradually buying up shares behind. We'll take back my father's company. Ginny glanced at her fiancé, who was totally in shock, and thrust documents at him too. The words compensation were written. I'll claim damages for all the mental distress you've caused, Ginny informs her fiancé. Then her gaze shifted to our company's CEO. He flinches slightly. Mr. Mike, I will poach you for our company. Brace yourself. I will bring down this place too, Jenny says, her mouth the only part of her that's smiling. Her eyes are not. Is this your idea of revenge? Hearing CEO Williams's squeezing voice, a big smile appeared on Jenny's face. If you compare it with what you've done to my family, it's nothing. The real hell starts now. In truth, Jenny was CEO Williams's daughter, but his niece. Her biological father was the CEO who was ousted by Williams. Jenny's father, having lost control of the company, died from a combination of stress and overwork. Seemingly her mother, who had been part of a loving couple, died of illness not long after. Only Jenny and her brother were left. Jenny was taken in by CEO Williams, and her brother was put into a facility. It's likely CEO Williams adopted Jenny because he thought she could be a useful pawn in the future. He probably never imagined that she would turn on him. Jenny had been patiently waiting for a moment of revenge. As CEO Williams collapses in defeat, Ginny looks at him once, then extends a hand to me. Welcome to our company, Mr. Mike. Just as she had declared, Jenny set out to destroy the company. Where I had been working, the employees tremble at the sight of her relentless advance with no hesitation or doubt. I started working as a secretary to the CEO at Ginny's company. The CEO is Jenny's real brother, Mr. James. He's the same age as me. The new job was tough in many ways, but somehow I managed. The company seemed to be changing into a more pleasant workplace, freed from dictatorship. I think the brighter expressions of the employees are proof of that. I would love to say everything is going well, but there's one thing that worries me. Jenny has been avoiding me. Ever since the incident in the CEO's office, she has been actively ignoring me. Even when we pass in the hallway, she just acts as if I don't exist. Just when I'm trying to find a way to talk to her, CEO James shows up. Do you know what a Savannah cat is, Mike? Confused by the unrelated topic, I tilt my head. A Savannah cat is a breed of cat born from the crossbreeding of a serval cat and a domestic cat. It's about the size of a dog. Depending on the breed, it is necessary to register with the local government to keep one. That large, mountain lion-like cat, right? They're rare in Japan. I reply. Mr. James then asks me to somehow arrange for a Savannah kitten. As the CEO's secretary, it's not unusual to be rallied upon for personal matters as well as work. James, being the same age as me, often makes unusual requests. I thought it would cheer Kado up. She hasn't been her usual self lately, he says with a look of concern. Indeed, if I showed Jenny who demanded to keep a baby lion, a Savannah cat, she'd be ecstatic. Sure thing, Mr. James. I'm pretty indulgent towards Ginny. Understood. I'll look into it right away and prepare a cake that she would like. It's her birthday soon. When I heard cake, I was surprised. Chelsea is supposed to dislike sweets. Mr. James should know that Ginny doesn't like sweets and can't eat them right. But a cake on my words, Mr. James seemed taken aback and sat down on the spot, scratching his head. I was taken aback by his sudden strange behaviour. Holding his head, Mr. James muttered, "That girl, what a fool." Apparently, when Jenny was little, she loved cakes. When our family got together for her birthdays, she would beg her father for various types of cakes. Even when the company was taken over, her father would still buy her a cake. Then, the day after Guinea's birthday, her father collapsed and never came back. Guinea believes it's all her fault. Mr. James told me that she thinks if she endures her favourite, her father will come to see her. Mr. James never expected that even now, as a college student, she would still hold on to that wish, to take back the company, to crush the trading company that drove her father to ruin. Jenny, who coldly gets everything done, is still a young girl who just wants to see her father. When I think about how much she's sacrificed to regain happiness, I feel like tears will overflow. I promised Mr. James about the Savannah cat and pleaded with him to tell me where Jenny was. I just want to talk to her. I drove to the place Mr. James told me. The personal exhibition we went to together is on its final day, and Jenny is said to be there. In the exhibition room, filled with the excited voices of children, I find Chelsea lost in thought. She was staring at a family looking at a wooden bear, seemingly enjoying themselves. Her profile looks expressionless, yet it also seems like she could burst into tears any moment. Found her. I gently whispered and gripped her hand so she couldn't run away. Jenny, who looked back in surprise, had noticeably lost weight since I last saw her. "Why are you avoiding me?" She shudders at my question. I stopped her from trying to run away by tightly gripping her hand. With a resigned look, she relaxed and said in a small voice, "Because you hate hitting, don't you?" Guinea continued in a small voice, thinking I despised her because I hate hitting. Her voice was shaking slightly. "I hate and abhor hitting, but it depends on the time and place. I've changed my mind a bit. I spoke to Jenny as gently as possible. If it's for you, I'm sure I can handle it." Upon hearing my words, Guinea started shedding tears. She told me she feels terrible for affecting innocent employees' families by taking over companies, but she always acted tough to show that the person she resents is herself. She says she's prepared to carry all the blame and live her life. "Is there anything I can do for you?" I gently asked the crying girl. Then, in a small voice, she replied, "Stay by me like my dad. Don't disappear. Always be by my side." I wanted to hold her right away, but I restrained myself. Instead, I put a lot of strength into the hand we were holding. "Understood. I'll always be by your side, Jenny. Can you smile at me every day?" And my question, Jenny cried and nodded many times. While watching her tears, I made a promise to myself. I will never make her cry again after today. I'd even import a Savannah cat if it's for her. Surely, she'll hug the big cat and show me a full-faced smile. The more, the merrier when it comes to family, right? As I muttered this, looking at families around us, Guinea's face turned beet red. Isn't it a bit early for that? Not at all, I think, about our way home from the art exhibition. I will buy one at a jewellery shop on the way. I was thinking about this, looking at Jenny's blushing face. Who would have thought that our meeting that day would lead to this? I had no idea back then. Now, I'm grateful to God for our encounter that day.
I'm Ava, a 29-year-old stay-at-home mom living in a cozy house I inherited from my grandma. It's not just any house. It's a piece of my childhood filled with memories of baking cookies with grandma and playing hide and seek in its spacious rooms. Now, it's home to my own little family. My husband, Mark, a hardworking manager, and our 2-year-old sunshine, Lily. Life sounds picture perfect, right? Well, it's not. The problem starts right next door, where Mark's parents, Helen and Frank, live. Our relationship, let's just say it's like mixing oil and water. Mommy, more juice! Lily's voice cuts through my thoughts. I pour her some juice, glancing at the clock. Almost 5 p.m. Time for the daily invasion. As if on cue, the door swings open. Ava, we're here! What's for dinner? Helen announces, with Frank shuffling in behind her. Hi, Helen. Frank? I've made a casserole, but it's just enough for Mark, Lily, and me, I reply, trying to keep my voice steady. Frank frowns. What do you mean, just enough? You know we come over for dinner? Helen chimes in, her tone sharp. You're at home all day, Ava. Is it too much to ask for a decent meal? I take a deep breath, feeling the frustration bubble up. I have my hands full with Lily, and cooking for 4 is a bit much every day. Mark walks in, tired from work. What's going on here? Your wife doesn't want to cook for us, Frank says, his voice raising. Mark looks at me, then at his parents, and sighs. Can't you just make a bit more, Ava? My frustration peaks. It's not about the amount, Mark. It's about respect and boundaries. Helen scoffs. Boundaries. We're family. Lily, sensing the tension, tugs at my dress. Mommy, I'm hungry. I kneel to her level. Let's get you seated, sweetie. Dinner is a tense affair. Mark's parents eat the sandwiches they brought, throwing disapproving glances my way. The TV blares in the background. Lily's fidgeting in her chair, and I'm trying not to crumble under the weight of this daily chaos. After they leave, Mark sits on the sofa, absorbed in his phone. We need to talk about this, I say, standing in front of him. He doesn't look up. Not now, Ava. I'm tired. And just like that, I'm left alone in the kitchen, cleaning up the mess, both literally and metaphorically. This is my life, a constant battle of wills, with me on one side and the world on the other. Life has a funny way of testing you, and mine's turning into a daily pop quiz with no right answers. I'm Ava, still juggling motherhood, a marriage that's running on autopilot, and in-laws who've mistaken my home for a free-for-all diner. It's another morning in our house, and I've made a decision. Today, I'm cooking only for 3, me, Mark, and our little Lily. Let's see how this goes. Lily's in her high chair, happily smearing oatmeal on her face when Helen and Frank barge in, just like clockwork. Morning, Ava. What's for breakfast? Helen asks, a bit too cheerily. I take a deep breath. Morning. I've only made enough for Lily and me today. Frank's face turns red. What do you mean? Are we supposed to starve? No, you're supposed to take care of your meals, I reply, trying to keep my voice calm. Helen's eyes narrow. This is ridiculous, Ava. We are family. You can't just... I cut her off. I can, and I did. I have enough on my plate with Lily and the house. Mark comes in, rubbing his eyes. Why's everyone shouting so early? Your wife refuses to cook for us, Frank's voice booms. Mark looks at me, then at his parents, and says, "Ava, why are you making things difficult?" "Difficult?" I almost laugh. "Mark, I'm not a 24/7 restaurant. I need help, not more mouths to feed." Mark doesn't say anything, just grabs a piece of toast and leaves for work. The day drags on. I can feel the tension thickening in the air. Dinner time rolls around, and I've stuck to my guns. Dinner for 3. Helen and Frank show up, each holding a sandwich. They sit down, unwrapping their food with exaggerated slowness. The TV's volume goes up, until it's like we're at a rock concert. Lily's rubbing her eyes, clearly struggling to stay awake amidst the noise. "Could you turn that down? Lily's trying to sleep," I ask, my patience wearing thin. Frank grunts. "We can't hear it if it's any lower." Helen adds, "You shouldn't be so uptight, Ava. It's just TV." "It's not just TV. It's my home turning into a battleground, and I'm losing." Lily starts to cry, and I scoop her up, escaping to the quiet of her room. Later, Mark comes home to find his parents still there. The living room, a mess. Lily asleep in my arms. "What happened here?" he asks, looking around. "I'm too tired for another round of arguments. Just the usual," I say, my voice flat. He doesn't push it, and neither do I, but inside, I feel something shift. I'm at my breaking point, and something's got to give. Every day feels like walking on eggshells in my own house. I'm Ava, still trying to find a balance between being a mom, a wife, and now, apparently, an unwelcome host to my in-laws. But today, it's not the in-laws that shake my world, it's Mark. It's late evening. Lily's finally asleep after what felt like hours of soothing. I'm clearing up the toys when Mark walks in, looking like he's carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. "Ava, we need to talk," he says, avoiding eye contact. I sit down, bracing myself. "What is it, Mark?" He takes a deep breath. "I made a mistake with our finances. I invested in something and it didn't pan out." I feel a chill run down my spine. "What do you mean? How bad is it?" "It's bad, really bad. I've lost a lot, like $100,000. My heart stops. 100,000? How could you do that without telling me?" Mark runs his hands through his hair, looking anywhere but at me. "I thought I could make it big, you know. Fix everything." "Fix what? We were fine. I can barely keep the tremor out of my voice." He finally looks at me, his eyes pleading. I know, but now we need a plan." "A plan?" I echo, feeling numb. "Yeah, I was thinking, maybe we could move my parents into our house, rent out their place to cover the debts." My mind races. His parents in our house? Full time. The very thought makes me feel like I'm suffocating. "Mark, are you serious? After everything with your parents, you want them here in our house all the time?" He sighs. "I know it's not ideal, but we don't have many options, Ava." I stand up, anger and disbelief swirling inside me. "Not ideal. It's a nightmare, Mark. And you just decided all of this without even talking to me?" He stands too, his voice rising. "What was I supposed to do, Ava? I'm trying to fix this." "By making my life a living hell," I shoot back. There's a silence, heavy and suffocating. Finally, I speak. my voice barely a whisper. Fine. Move them in. But this is on you, Mark? He nods, looking relieved and guilty all at once, but all I feel is a deep, sinking dread. This isn't just about money anymore. It's about trust, and I'm not sure how we come back from this. The day my in-laws moved in, it wasn't just their suitcases that entered our home. It was a tidal wave of chaos. Right from the start, it's clear that Helen and Frank are here to stay, and they have their own ideas about how things should be. Frank, put that box in the living room, and careful with it. Helen's voice echoes through the hallway as she directs her husband with military precision. I watch, holding Lily, who clings to me, wide-eyed at the commotion. Then, as if things couldn't get worse, Helen turns to me, Ava. We need to talk about rearranging the house. We need space for our things. I feel a knot in my stomach. Rearranging, Helen? There's not much space to work with. She waves her hand dismissively. Nonsense. Let's start with Lily's playroom. She can play in her bedroom, right? I'm taken aback. That's her space, Helen. She loves it there. Frank, carrying a heavy box, chimes in. Kid won't mind, Ava. Don't make a fuss. Lily buries her face in my neck, and I realize this is just the beginning. The days that follow are a blur of unwelcome changes. Helen and Frank unpack their belongings, turning the living room into their personal space. They replace my tasteful decor with their old-fashioned knacks, and the TV blares day and night with their favorite shows. I try to cook dinner one evening, with Lily tugging at my apron. Frank strolls in, eyeing the pots on the stove. What's this? Another one of your experimental dishes. I bite my tongue. It's a new recipe, Frank. If it's not to your liking, feel free to make something yourself. He laughs. In my day, women knew how to cook for their families. I feel a flash of anger, but before I can respond, Mark enters, looking weary. Can't we have one peaceful meal? I turn to him, my patience wearing thin. Peaceful? Mark, your parents have turned our home upside down. He avoids my gaze, grabbing a beer and retreating to the now occupied living room. Weeks pass, and the tension only grows. Helen has opinions on everything, from how I raise Lily to how I should manage the house. Frank, meanwhile, has taken to criticizing my cooking at every meal. One afternoon, I'm folding laundry when Helen walks in. Ava, these sheets aren't folded properly. Let me show you how it's done. I set my jaw. Thanks, Helen, but I've been folding sheets my whole life. She tuts, clearly not the right way. As she refolds the sheets, I feel a sense of helplessness. My own home no longer feels like mine. Night falls and I'm lying in bed, staring at the ceiling. The muffled sounds of the TV and my in-laws' laughter seep through the walls. Lily is asleep, but rest eludes me. I think back to the days when this house was filled with love and laughter, a stark contrast to the present. It feels like I'm losing a part of myself, bit by bit, as each day passes. Mark's side of the bed is empty. He's been spending more and more time working late. I'm left alone, wondering how things got this bad, and what, if anything, I can do to take back control of my life and my home. In a house that once felt like mine, I'm Ava, now a spectator in my own life. With my in-laws' takeover and Mark's growing distance, I'm left grappling with suspicions that refuse to settle. One afternoon, while Lily naps and the house is momentarily quiet, I call my brother, Jake. He's always been the one I turn to in tough times. "Hey, Jake," I say, trying to sound casual. "Ava, how's it going? Haven't heard from you in a while." I take a deep breath. "Not great, Jake. I'm worried about Mark. He's different." Jake's tone shifts, more serious now. Different how? He's always working late, secretive with his phone, and there's this tension, like he's hiding something. Jake pauses, then says, "You think he's seeing someone else?" The words sting, even though I've thought them 1,000 times. I don't know, Jake. I just feel like I'm losing him. There's a resolve in Jake's voice when he speaks. "Let me do something. I have a friend, a private detective. He can discreetly check on Mark, see what's up." I'm hesitant. A detective? Isn't that a bit much? "Ava, if something's wrong, you need to know. For you and Lily." I sigh, a mix of relief and fear. "Okay, do it. But, Jake, keep it quiet. I don't want to stir up more trouble if it's nothing." "You got it. I'll take care of it," he assures me. Days pass, and each of Mark's late nights and hushed phone calls add to my growing unease. Then, one evening, Jake calls. "Ava, I have some news. Can you meet me tomorrow? Just you?" My heart sinks. Yes, I can make it. The next day, I sit across from Jake in a quiet cafe, the air thick with anticipation. "So, what did you find out?" I ask, my voice barely above a whisper. Jake hesitates, then hands me an envelope. "Ava, it's not good." I open it to find photos and reports. There's Mark with a woman I don't recognize and a child. My world spins. He has a child? Jake nods solemnly. "I'm sorry, Ava." The detective confirmed it. Mark's been living a double life. Tears blur my vision. How could he do this? To me? To Lily? Jake reaches across the table, his hand on mine. "You're stronger than you know, Ava. We'll figure this out together." I nod, wiping away tears. "I need to confront him, Jake. He has to explain this. Be careful, Ava. You don't know how he'll react." "I have to know, Jake. I have to know why." Armed with the truth, but shattered inside, I head home. A confrontation is inevitable, and I need to brace myself for the storm that's about to hit. It's the evening of the dinner, and I'm Ava, preparing a meal that I know even my critical mother-in-law can't find fault with. The house is buzzing with a tense energy as I await the arrival of my brother, Jake. Tonight is about more than a family dinner. It's about unveiling a painful truth. As I set the table, I can feel the weight of the envelope in my pocket, heavy with the evidence of Mark's betrayal. My hands shake slightly, but I steady myself. This needs to be done. The dinner starts off like any other. Mark's parents, Helen and Frank, along with Mark, sit around the table, complimenting the food for a change. I catch Mark's eye, and he gives me a small, oblivious smile. "It's almost time." Jake arrives, apologizing for being late. As he sits down, he casually turns to Mark. "So, Mark, Ava told me about your investment ventures. Sounds interesting." Mark, caught off guard, coughs. "Oh yeah, it's nothing big." I watch as Jake probes further. "What kind of investments? Stocks? Real estate?" Mark stumbles over his words. A bit of everything, really." I can see the confusion on Jake's face, feigned for the others, but all too real for me. Can you tell me more? I've been looking to invest myself." Mark fumbles, clearly out of his depth. "It's complex stuff, hard to explain over dinner." That's my cue. I pull out the envelope and place it on the table, pushing it towards Mark. "Maybe this will help explain," I say, my voice steady. Everyone's attention shifts to the envelope. Mark opens it, his face draining of color as he sees the photos, him with another woman and a child. Helen gasps, "Mark, what is this?" Frank looks on, stunned into silence. Mark tries to speak, but nothing coherent comes out. He looks at me, betrayal in his eyes. "Eva, why?" "Why? You have a second family, Mark. How could you do this to us?" "So you moved your parents to my house, and with the money you received from renting their apartment, you kept your mistress?" I'm almost yelling now, the pain and anger I've been holding back spilling over. The room is silent, the air thick with shock. Helen and Frank look between Mark and the photos, disbelief written all over their faces. "You lied to us, to your own family," Helen whispers, her voice filled with hurt. Frank just shakes his head, unable to find words. Mark stands up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I need to explain," he says, "but it's clear no explanation can undo this." He walks out of the room, and I'm left there with his parents in a deafening silence. The air in the house is thick with tension the morning after the revelation. I'm Eva, still reeling from the shock, but ready to face the consequences. Helen and Frank, Mark's parents, confront me in the kitchen, their faces twisted with anger. Helen's voice is sharp as a knife. This is your doing. You drove our son to this." I stare at her, disbelief and anger mixing in my gut. "Me? Your son lied to all of us, Helen?" Frank chimes in, his voice just as accusing. "He was always a good boy until he married you. You must have pushed him away." My hands tremble with fury. I pushed him away. I cared for our family while he... Helen cuts me off. "Oh, save it. You probably had men on the side too. That's why he did what he did." "I've had enough. How dare you?" I yell. "I've been nothing but loyal and supportive, and you blame me for your son's betrayal?" Frank steps closer, his face red. "Our son would never have done this if it weren't for you." I take a step back, my heart pounding. "You know what? I don't need to listen to this. This is my house, and I want you out. Now..." Helen scoffs. "You can't kick us out. This is our son's house too." I stand my ground, firm and unwavering. "No, Helen. This house was my grandmother's, and now it's mine. You have no right to be here after what you've said." Frank looks like he wants to argue, but Helen grabs his arm. "Let's go, Frank. We don't need to stay where we're not wanted." As they pack their things, I feel a mix of relief and sadness. Once they're gone, I lock the door behind them, the click of the lock echoing in the empty house. Alone in the silence, I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. I look around the house, my house, and for the first time in a long while, I see a future where Lily and I can be free from lies and betrayal. I pick up the phone to call a locksmith. It's time to change the locks, to change our lives. The house feels different today, like a new chapter has just begun. I'm Ava, standing in my once troubled living room, now a space of peace and possibility. The legal battle is over, and the court's decision still echoes in my mind. I recall my lawyer's words from yesterday. The court has granted you substantial alimony and compensation for Mark's deceit and infidelity. He'll be paying for quite some time. I had felt a mix of relief and vindication hearing that. It wasn't about the money, it was about accountability. Lily, oblivious to the complexities of the adult world, plays on the floor. Her laughter is a balm to my soul. I watch her, thinking about our future. The phone rings, snapping me back to the present. It's Jake, checking in. Hey, Ava, how are you holding up? I smile. Better, Jake. Much better. The court's decision helped close a painful chapter. Jake's voice is warm. I'm glad, Ava. You deserve peace after all this. I glance at Lily. We both do. As I talk to Jake, I can't help but think about Mark. The last I heard, he was struggling to make ends meet, now living with his parents again. It's ironic, I say to Jake. He's back where he started, but this time by his own doing. Jake sighs. He brought it on himself, Ava. You did what you had to do. I nod, feeling a sense of closure. Mark's choices led him here, and I no longer feel any obligation to worry about him. After the call, I sit with Lily, watching her play. The court's decision has given us a financial cushion, but more importantly, it's given us freedom. Mommy, look! Lily holds up a drawing of our house. Our home, she says proudly. I hug her. Yes, sweetie, our happy home. I realize then that this is just the beginning for us. A beginning filled with hope, strength, and the love we have for each other. The road ahead is ours to shape, and I feel ready to embrace whatever comes our way, with Lily by my side.
Call back. Getting through to her is rare, maybe once in 10 tries. But I needed more details. Her fiancé might come for a greeting. And there could be a meeting with both families. If her fiancé were visiting, I'd need to clean the house. And if I were meeting her future in-laws, I'd want to dress appropriately. I tried contacting Hannah several times, but she never picked up. Usually, she only calls during Easter or Christmas to ask about meals. Or when she needs money due to financial hardships. She'd come home for holidays if her favorite dishes were prepared. But otherwise, she wouldn't. When she asked for money, I suggested she move back home if things were tough. But she'd refuse and just ask for a money transfer instead. She didn't want advice, just financial help. Hannah works in the town next door. Commuting from home would be financially smarter. But she refuses, so I occasionally help her to ensure she doesn't struggle to eat. Assuming she wouldn't want to hear any nagging, she probably didn't answer my calls. Reluctantly, I reached out to Aaron again. According to him, her fiancé's parents were busy working abroad and wouldn't be back until the wedding day. So there wouldn't be a formal meeting between the families. They planned to handle the greetings on the wedding day itself. Aaron suggested they should at least greet each other beforehand. But Hannah stubbornly refused. She insisted that the wedding was their own affair. And they'd marry regardless of any objections, so greeting on the day would suffice. I could understand her point, but knowing each other as soon-to-be relatives seemed important. Maybe my thinking is outdated? On the day of Hannah's wedding, I hadn't received any communication or invitation from her. But knowing the venue and date, I dressed in a formal dress to celebrate her. Probably, in her typical negligent manner, she thought Aaron had informed me and didn't send an invite. Maybe she planned to but forgot. I had some reservations about whether Hannah could manage being a surgeon's wife. But today was her big day, and I intended to celebrate without any criticisms. When I arrived, I wasn't sure where the bridal room was due to the multiple weddings and the crowded lobby. If Hannah had informed me, I wouldn't have troubled the busy staff. After the staff guided me to the bridal room, I thanked them and knocked on the door. Hearing Hannah's voice, I opened it. She was already dressed in her wedding gown, looking so beautiful in the mirror that I almost cried with joy. "Congratulations on your big day." As I spoke, Hannah's face contorted. I couldn't understand why she looked so displeased on what should have been a happy day. Perhaps she had some anxiety about the marriage, or was worried about getting along with her future in-laws. Pre-wedding greetings and family meetings would have eased such concerns, I thought. But today was her special day, and I didn't want to lecture her. I tried to reassure her with a smile and approached her. But she snapped, "Why did you come? You weren't invited," and forcefully pushed me away. I was shocked. I had never seen her be violent, though she was often harsh with her words. I couldn't believe she would do this, and though I hadn't received an official invitation, I couldn't grasp that she hadn't invited her own mother. "Go home now." My daughter glared at me and said. Her expression was far from what one would expect from a bride in her wedding dress. And I was utterly confused. When I asked her why she wanted me to leave, she twisted her face in displeasure and said, "I don't need you in my life anymore." Which left me even more baffled. Had I done something to make her say such a thing? "You might as well not exist in this world for me, so disappear." Her unhappy expression twisted into a sly, malicious smile. "Why would you say such a lie? It's because you were such an unattractive woman that you got cheated on. And we ended up in a single-parent home, living a constrained life." My daughter answered in a rough tone. I had never intended to make my children live a deprived life. To avoid being labeled as just a single-parent family, I had actively participated in school events. I never missed celebrating important events like birthdays or Christmas. And I always gave them an appropriate amount of pocket money for their age. Although it might sound self-righteous, I managed to get both my son and daughter through college and vocational school without scholarships. This was possible because I had been working at the same company since graduating from university, holding a position that earned more than most women my age. Yet, my daughter still thinks we lived a poor life and lacked freedom. The allowance was too little, and the reason I couldn't go to the private high school I wanted was because you were the kind of woman who would get cheated on. My daughter looked resentful, thinking that if both parents had been together, she wouldn't have had to feel this way. She probably thinks that if both parents had worked, we could have afforded a more affluent life. Indeed, the reason my husband left might have been partly due to my lack of appeal. But not sending my daughter to the private high school wasn't because of financial issues. If she had a genuine desire to study something specific at that school, I would have sent her even if it had been a struggle. However, her only reason for wanting to go there was because she liked the uniform, so I simply didn't allow it. I was at a loss for words, never having imagined that she would blame our financial situation. Thinking I was cornered by my silence, my daughter attacked me with a triumphant look. "I've worked hard not to end up like you, living a poor life, and making sure I wouldn't be the kind of woman who gets cheated on." From middle school, my daughter had put a lot of effort into her appearance, and she was quite pretty. Unlike me, who only wore simple makeup, she was very skilled at it. She had boasted about never being without a boyfriend. My daughter believed that I was cheated on because I lacked attractiveness. And she has always seemed to think that appearance is everything. Despite my efforts to teach her that it's what's inside that counts, she never seemed to understand. People judge by appearances. Thanks to my beauty, I can marry someone high-spec. She snorted with pride. Since I'm marrying a doctor, if it comes out that I was raised in a poor single-parent home, the engagement might be called off. Just go home. But won't your fiancé find it strange that your mother isn't at the wedding? As my daughter continued to insist I leave, I posed a sensible question. She replied, that's fine. It'd be more suspicious if you were here. It seems my daughter has also lied to her fiancé and his family, claiming her parents died in an accident when she was in middle school. She told them that she and her brother supported each other using their parents' inheritance and that she was able to graduate from vocational school thanks to her brother's success as a lawyer. Moreover, she set herself up as a diligent girl who struggled to balance study and part-time jobs for her future. In reality, my daughter has never worked a part-time job. She hung out with friends almost every day after school, and her grades were below average. It's astounding how she could come up with such fabrications. Doesn't she think her lies will be discovered, or is she confident they won't be? I think such lies are easily uncovered. Also, she seems to think that me being cheated on and divorced is shameful. But I've never lived in a way that I consider disgraceful. Every complaint my daughter made was her own selfish belief or whim. But even if I point this out now, she would likely just get angry and not listen. Since today is her wedding day, I'll respect the bride's wishes. Yes, I understand. If my daughter doesn't need me, then so be it. As she wishes, I'll no longer involve myself with her. With that decision in my heart, I left the venue. While I was on my way home in a taxi, my son called. When he asked where I was, I honestly told him I was on my way back. What? Hannah's ceremony is about to start. He was very surprised. But when I explained what my daughter had said, he became furious. I'm not attending my ungrateful sister's wedding either. He said that and hung up. I don't know if he really went back, but that's for him to decide. When I arrived home, I changed out of my formal dress into something more comfortable and decided to relax. I had cleared my schedule for the wedding, so it looked like I could take it easy today. I poured some tea into my favorite mug and settled down to relax. About 3 hours after I got home, my daughter called. She had dismissed me as unnecessary, saying she didn't need me. I was angry too. Even as a mother who cherished her, being spoken to that way was infuriating. I have emotions too. Especially now, I didn't feel calm enough to talk, so I ignored the call. But she kept calling over and over, so reluctantly, I answered. Before she even confirmed it was me, she blurted out something incredibly selfish. Come back to the venue right now. Why? The ceremony should be over by now, shouldn't it? I couldn't understand why she would insist on me coming back. After the wedding was surely over. After all, it was she who had told me to leave, so why should I return now? However, she kept begging in a near tearful voice. It seems the director of the hospital where she works noticed my absence at the reception and made a fuss about it. Unbeknownst to me, I had been invited by the groom's side. I work in medical device sales. I had been visiting the comprehensive hospital where my daughter works long before. She started working there, so I knew the director well. And the hospital was planning to sign a contract to introduce a very rare surgical robot in the USA, which the groom was going to use. That's why I had been invited to the wedding. Even without an invitation from my daughter. I could have attended because of the groom's invitation. But there was no sign of me at either the wedding or the reception. The director, noticing this, asked the venue staff to check the guest list. My name was already marked as checked in. However, even though all the hospital staff invited to the wedding searched the venue, I was nowhere to be found. The groom and the director were perplexed when a venue staff mentioned, "If it's that person, I guided her to the bridal room earlier, so I saw her leave." Now my daughter was being questioned by the groom and the director. Furthermore, the absence of her brother, who was supposed to have supported her all along, put her in a difficult situation. After being subjected to my daughter's unreasonable anger, I no longer felt like celebrating for her. However, I couldn't ignore my professional connections. Reluctantly, I decided to head back to the venue. My daughter sounded relieved and thankful. But even if I went to the venue, it wouldn't help her. If her lies were exposed, I would only tell the truth. My daughter would learn firsthand what happens when you care only about appearances and neglect your inner qualities. As I was getting ready, I received a call from my son, Aaron. It seems that my daughter, Hannah, had also called him asking for help. Although he was angry and had said he wouldn't attend the ceremony, it seemed he couldn't completely ignore his sister's plight. Aaron was waiting at a cafe near the venue, ready to attend the ceremony if Hannah apologized to me. However, as the time for the ceremony and then the reception passed, Hannah did not contact Aaron. It's unlikely that no one noticed the absence of the bride's brother. Hannah probably covered it up with some plausible lie. I sighed in exasperation at my daughter's continual lying. Aaron sounded frustrated on the phone, saying, "I don't think Hannah has any intention of apologizing. You don't need to go either, Mom." But because of my work connections, I had to go. When I told him this, Aaron said he would come to the venue with me. So we decided to meet in front of it. This time, I wore my business suit instead of the formal dress and hurried to the venue. I met Aaron in front of the venue and we proceeded to the bridal room from which I had been ousted hours earlier. Upon opening the door, unlike a few hours ago, I found Hannah out of her wedding dress and in casual clothes, along with the groom and the hospital director. I bowed to the groom and the director, apologizing for leaving after being invited. The director asked why I had suddenly left. I was told to leave by my daughter. I was just fulfilling the bride's wishes for her special day. The groom and the director, who had been told that Hannah's parents had died in an accident, looked at her suspiciously. I reintroduced myself as the bride's mother. Then, Hannah started to make excuses. "No. This person is like a relative who took care of me." But Aaron interrupted her, saying, "She's our mother who raised us single-handedly." When Aaron corrected her lie, Hannah tried to pressure him. "She was just a relative who acted like a mother, right? Right, brother?" However, Aaron did not cover for her and scolded her for lying. Then turned to the groom to apologize for missing the ceremony. It seemed Aaron and the groom were meeting for the first time. According to the groom, Hannah had said, "My brother is a successful lawyer who travels around the country, and he can't make time until the day of the wedding," and had refused a meeting between the families. That was supposed to happen before the wedding. She probably wanted to prevent the truth about me being alive from coming out through her justice-driven brother. She must have thought that on the wedding day, with all the hustle, her lies would not be uncovered, even if there wasn't time to talk to the groom. There should have been conversations with his family. It was naive of Hannah to think she wouldn't be exposed. If she truly wanted to erase my existence, she should not have invited Aaron either. But that would break the narrative of siblings supporting each other. So she had no choice but to invite him. What do you mean? Hannah lied to me? The groom confronted Hannah. She excused herself by saying she thought the engagement would be called off if it was known. She was from a poor single-parent family. The director was shocked. Poor? Who? The director knew I was a top-performing salesperson in medical device sales, which typically pays higher than normal sales positions. I might even earn as much as the groom, who is a surgeon. The director explained and Hannah said, "But I received little allowance. And I wasn't allowed to go to the high school I wanted because it was private." The groom, looking incredulous, asked how much allowance she received. In high school, it was $50 and in vocational school, $100. But that's gone quickly when you go out with friends. And my friends had much more money. The high school Hannah attended did not prohibit part-time jobs. Her friends simply earned their own money through work, unlike her. Isn't that enough money if you add a part-time job? That it runs out quickly. The groom pointed out, and Hannah looked caught. Indeed, she had told the groom she had struggled to balance study and part-time jobs for the future. It's no wonder the groom is suspicious. Was even the part-time job a lie? I can't trust anything about Hannah anymore. The groom slumped, overwhelmed. Hannah clung to him begging for forgiveness, but he remained silent, head bowed. The director, unable to stand it, asked if there were more lies. Then, in a flash of defiance, Hannah blamed me. "It's all because you were stingy." Apparently, she couldn't see that blaming me, when her lies had been exposed, would only worsen her image. I wondered how she turned out this way, when I had tried to educate her just as well as Aaron. Perhaps her education was the only thing I got wrong. Hannah had grown up just like her father, who was frivolous with appearances and spending, always ready to dip into the family budget when his salary wasn't enough. I had repeatedly cautioned her about money, when she wanted to go to a private high school and when she asked for more allowance. But it seems none of it had resonated with her. Whether I was stingy or poor, it was Hannah who decided to lie about it because she felt ashamed of me. I recognize the effort you made to be beautiful. But it's not right to adorn yourself with lies just because you lack confidence. As I pointed this out, Hannah snapped. I didn't lie because I lack confidence. I lied because I'm ashamed of you. Even so, it's wrong to pretend your mother doesn't exist. If she had simply said we didn't get along, it wouldn't have been a lie. If she hadn't piled on lies to make herself look better, she wouldn't have lost the groom's trust. I always tried to remain calm when admonishing my children, especially as they grew older, because raising my voice could lead to escalated emotions rather than a focus on the issue at hand. Surprised by my raised voice, Hannah flinched and froze. Aaron gaped in shock, and both the groom and the director voiced their disbelief, looking coldly at Hannah. Unable to bear the situation, she collapsed to her knees and started crying like a child. I thought to myself, this must be what chaos looks like. Only Hannah's crying filled the silence, and the atmosphere was stark. Then the director spoke up. This might not be the best time, but... He suddenly asked me not to cancel the contract for the surgical robot. I understood his feelings, even though it seemed an odd time to bring it up. I had worked hard to bring this rare surgical robot to the hospital. where my daughter worked because of the director, unbeknownst to him. However, now that it was known my daughter was related to me, the director felt a crisis about the robot's introduction. The groom also pleaded earnestly. Even though my daughter had just been crying loudly, she seemed to realize how important the robot's introduction was from the director. And groom's attitude toward me and pleaded, "I'm sorry. It was all my fault, so please, just the contract with the hospital." As it was a work-related issue, I wanted to say my daughter's behavior shouldn't affect it. But this time, I had mixed personal feelings into the contract. It wasn't the director's or groom's fault. But I told them I wanted to reconsider everything once I got back to my company. The director yelled at my daughter, "What have you done?" And the groom was in shock, murmuring, "My career." I decided this was no longer just a family issue but a hospital matter. And I left the bridal room with Aaron. Later, I received a call from Hannah. She had previously dismissed me as unnecessary. I ignored the call for a while, but she kept calling, so I reluctantly answered. "Mom, it's all your fault the engagement was broken off. What are you going to do about it?" As soon as she spoke, my daughter began to blame me. Despite having explained her mistakes and apologizing once, she was still trying to pin the blame on me, which was appalling. As I remained silent, she continued to rant about her current situation. It seems she had angered the hospital director, and rumors had spread within the hospital. The male staff, who had previously adored her, now kept their distance. Her already strained relations with the female staff had worsened, and the whispering had increased. Hannah was using her engagement to a surgeon to boost her status and complained, "Now that the engagement's broken off, people will say that women who can marry are winners, and those who can't are losers, right? So, what group do you belong to now, huh? They'll say it's the lowest, isn't it awful?" I was ashamed of Hannah just as she had said she was of me. No matter how much she polished her appearance, without inner substance, it was meaningless. I pitied my daughter for still not understanding. This even after her engagement was called off. When would she ever realize? It's all your fault, Mom, so you need to take responsibility and take care of me for a while. I was shocked by my daughter's absurd demand. Apparently, she was planning to resign from her uncomfortable job at the hospital and return home. But coddling her now would not help her recognize her mistakes. I decided to toughen up, perhaps too late, but as they say, the mother hawk pushes her chicks off the cliff to teach them to fly. Everything you've done up to now has made you who you are. You're reaping what you sowed. My words angered my daughter, who hurled vile insults at me. But I was unyielding in my stance. Also, don't think about coming home. You tried to erase me from your life, so you should live by your words. When I told her I would not support her anymore, she flipped and spoke sweetly. "Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't mean any harm." She seemed to find it hard to continue working and desperately wanted to quit. But living alone would be difficult if she resigned. She had come begging for money even while earning a salary, likely having saved nothing. She pleaded not to be abandoned. But coddling her would only encourage her not to reflect on her actions. Her behavior on the day of the wedding, pretending to be remorseful, and then showing no actual remorse, was a prime example. I simply told her, "You'd better try your best," and hung up. After that, she called many times, but I did not answer. Later, I learned from the director that Hannah had resigned from the hospital. I apologized for any trouble my daughter had caused him and her ex-fiancé. But the director said there was no need as the surgical robot would still be introduced as planned. It's rather I feel sorry that I couldn't help your daughter enough to prevent her resignation. The resignation was her own doing. The director didn't truly feel responsible for her resignation. When I assured him not to worry, he easily shifted the conversation to the upcoming surgical robot. Hannah, now unemployed, was struggling with her job search. She had sold most of her expensive beauty products to make ends meet. I heard from Aaron. He also refused to help her financially. She gets carried away too easily when pampered. However, he sometimes took her out for meals. During one of those meals, she reportedly acknowledged how privileged she had been. I hoped she would genuinely reflect and grow into a self-reliant adult woman.
Hi there, my name's Nancy. I'm 21 years old. 3 years ago, I married the love of my life. Everything seemed to be going great. Even though my husband is Spanish, we didn't have many problems, except for the language barrier. To show my love, I decided to learn Spanish so I could talk better with him and his family. That's how much I loved him. I was doing this in secret. Johnson, my husband, and Mary, my mother-in-law, didn't know I was learning Spanish. Not only was I learning, but I got pretty good at it. I knew that if I was in Spain, I could manage. You might be wondering, if I'm so good at Spanish, why doesn't my husband know? Well, I was a bit shy. It can be scary trying to speak a new language, especially with people you're close to. But I decided it was time to stop hiding. I needed to speak Spanish with both my husband and my mother-in-law. After all, I learned to make communication easier, right? Well, it's a good thing I didn't start speaking Spanish right away, because I found out some surprising information one day that led to a series of unfortunate events. Hello, Mama. How are you, my son? Thank you for inviting me over this lovely Sunday afternoon. It was our pleasure, Mom. Hello, Mama. Hello, my daughter. How are you? Thank you so much for including me. Oh, hush, you know you're always wanted and welcome here. I brought some croissants and how do you Americans say, bagels? Yes, bagels and croissants for our afternoon tea. Oh, how lovely. Thank you so much. Come and sit, Mama. The food will be ready soon. Did she prepare the food? No, I did most of the prep. Don't worry. Oh, thank God. Hearing this, I wondered what she meant by that, but I was too shy to ask. How strange, Mary always seemed to like my cooking. Why was she saying those things? At the time, I thought maybe she just wanted to eat food made by her son. That day, maybe she wanted to taste food that reminded her of old times. Then I heard her say, I hate her cooking. Why did you invite me here instead of taking me to a cafe so we could avoid her, Mom? We agreed to speak in English so Nancy doesn't feel left out, remember? Oh, forgive me, my sweet daughter. I was just saying that the food looks so good. I was surprised to learn that my son made it. Oh, I wish it was you who made it. I love your cooking. At this point, I was confused. How could she say such awful things in Spanish and then lie to my face in English? I thought I might have misunderstood, but I had a plan to confirm what I heard. Oh, please don't worry. You should never feel ashamed to speak your native tongue. Go right ahead. I'll be fine. I wanted to catch what she was saying, so I planned to use the Google Translate app to record her and make sure I understood correctly. We all sat at the table, getting ready to eat, and what came next shocked me to the core. I want us to discuss our plan. The time is approaching. It's literally tomorrow, Johnson. You have to be serious. The app, along with my Spanish knowledge, confirmed there was some plan going on, but I didn't know what it was. Mama, not now. I said I would handle it. What are you going to tell her, Nancy darling? Please pass me the sugar. She doesn't know anything about the plan. I was just going to tell her that I would be out of town. Out of town? What for? What was going on? I was so confused. I was constantly looking down at my phone to see what the app was translating. I think they assumed I wasn't paying attention and became less careful with their words, which was good for me as I was learning their true feelings. She's not too smart. Look at her, glued to her phone. We can talk about this now, okay, Mama? Fine. What do you want to discuss? The plane is leaving at 2:00 p.m. Are you sure you'll be able to escape her then? Escape me? What for? I was so confused, but I stayed calm and pretended not to understand so I could plan my next move. Yes, Mama, I know. I will do what needs to be done. I know how important this is. It is extremely important. If your great-uncle doesn't see us tomorrow, he will give the house to someone else, like your cousin or your aunt. We can't let that happen. No one needs to know about this house. Oh, Mama, you're so funny. Don't worry. I just said that in English so she doesn't suspect what we're talking about. Nancy. Yes, oh, sorry, my love. I was just asking who made this delicious tea. It's splendid. Oh, that would be your talented son. I'm afraid I'm not as good as he is when it comes to these things. Oh, darling, your food is amazing. Amazingly terrible, Mom. She'll catch you. She can't catch me. She's too stupid to understand us. I don't know, Mom. She obviously understands some basics. Let's see, Nancy. How much Spanish do you know? At this moment, I knew I had to lie. I said I didn't know much so they would keep exposing themselves, and I could keep learning their true colors. How I managed to stay calm while being insulted still amazes me. I guess I knew it was more important to handle this situation than to get emotional. Right then, I said, "Oh, I'm still very bad at Spanish. I only know the typical things like buenos dias and como te llamas. But that's it." Oh, that simply won't do, darling. You should learn some more Spanish. Yes, ma'am, I will. Well, it's a good thing for Johnson and me, as we can gossip about you. I'm just, how do you say, kidding with you, mi niño. We would never do that to you. Are we doing it right now? Yes, which makes this extra funny. They laughed, and I kept using Google Translate. I also checked other apps, websites, and forums to see if what they were saying was correct. I got about 99% confirmation from these sources. Now that I knew they clearly didn't like me and were making fun of me, I had to gather as much information as possible. Even though their insults were hurting me, the next thing I heard shattered my resolve. As I was saying, this house is extremely important. No one can know about this house. Okay, we need to be the only ones knowing because we could make a lot of money. We can't lose this opportunity. I'm so glad we're doing this. It's a good thing we didn't tell my wife because I don't want to share the spoils. Me neither. Everything needs to go smoothly. Your great-uncle Jack said that whoever contacts him first about this issue will inherit the mansion. So we need to go there physically before anyone else and start working on remodeling and improving the house. I can't wait to have a house in New Hampshire. This is where I'll go to escape my wife and my life here in Mississippi. Sometimes I can't stand her. You know, you're still young, way too young to be married to someone like her. Come and live with me in New Hampshire. You can enjoy your youth with women and booze, have a good time, and then settle down when you're ready. Let's leave this place. Honestly, Mama, I think you're right. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I felt tears welling up. Excuse me, what's wrong? Is everything okay? Yes, I just need to get something from the kitchen. I couldn't listen to them anymore. I needed to collect myself and not make a scene. How could they say those awful things with me right there in the room? Did they have no shame? I was so upset I began pacing up and down the kitchen. And then I saw my mother-in-law's purse sitting on the counter. I decided to look inside and take her phone. Luckily, it was unlocked. I opened her WhatsApp and sent Uncle Jack's number to my phone. I quickly deleted the text from her phone, so it looked like nothing happened. It felt like I was acting on instinct. I didn't know why I did it, but I was glad because I was now planning to get back at them. I returned to the dining room where the conversation was still going on. They seemed to be talking about the same thing. So tomorrow we leave for vacation. I think it's well-deserved because of all the hard work we've been doing. I second that. We deserve this break. Is everything okay? Yes, honey, we were just talking about the weather and how it's a perfect day to go relax somewhere. Would you like us to do that maybe not today? See, no, okay. When would you like to go then, maybe tomorrow? Both Mary and Johnson froze slightly. I was looking for their reaction and noticed it. I don't think tomorrow will be possible. I asked Scene to help me with some things around the house. Oh, what things? Why is she asking so many questions? Just to move things around. I can help too if you like. That won't be necessary. See how nosy she is being? I don't like it one bit. Do you see why you have to leave this place? Don't worry, Mama, I've got this handled. I still managed to keep a smile despite knowing what they were saying. I was looking forward to my plan for revenge. I continued recording their conversations until the very end to make sure I had all the details. As I mentioned before, my Spanish was getting pretty good, but I still wanted to make sure I got the right information. That night, I snuck away to the bedroom and went to the office to do some more investigating. I replayed the audio, and sure enough, my doubts about my accuracy were gone. From this whole ordeal, I learned that there was a vacation planned for tomorrow to go and claim a house from Great Uncle Jack, and that these people apparently hated me and were planning to leave. A bonus piece of information I got was when I went to the kitchen to pace. I had left my phone, which was still recording, in the room with my husband and mother-in-law, and I managed to pick up some more useful information. The conversation consisted of Mary asking Johnson about his computer password because she wanted to change some aspects of their flight. I managed to get the password and flight details. I must have hit the jackpot. I logged into Johnson's computer, and sure enough, there were flight details on the website where he booked the tickets. Feeling very sneaky and devious, I may or may not have changed their flight details, pushing their flight to the day after tomorrow. This was just phase 1 of my plans. There was a lot more to come. Since I had sent myself Great Uncle Jack's number, I was ready to do what I needed to do. Hello, Uncle Jack. It's Nancy. Oh, hello, darling. How are you doing? Is everything okay? Well, no, not really. I went into great detail, explaining what had happened that day. I even sent him the audio recording as proof, because without it, I doubt he would have believed me. We cut the call so he could listen to the voice recordings, and we talked again after. After he finished listening, wow, I don't even know what to say. How could Mary and Johnson do this? They were such sweet and innocent people when they were younger. How could they do this to you? To me? I know it's a lot to take in. It was shocking to me, too. You have indeed improved your Spanish. Well done. Thanks, Jack, but now that we know this, what do we do? Well, obviously, they're not going to get the house. That's a fact. After hearing all of this, there is no way that I would never give such a valuable and honorable gift to people who plan to ruin it with their evilness and foolishness. Okay, I get it. It's your house, and you have every right to do what you want with it. Yes, I do. From now on, I will ignore their calls. Let's see how they feel about that. Thanks again for bringing this to my attention. You are a good and kind-hearted person, Nancy. Please don't let the ugliness of this world change you. Thank you for your time and willingness to listen. Hearing what you heard today couldn't have been easy. I applaud you for your strength. Please take care, Uncle Jack. You too. Love, good night. With that, I knew I had secured the downfall of both Mary and Johnson. Now that everything was set, I just had to wait for the right moment to make my move. When I got back to the bedroom, Johnson was still fast asleep. It hurt to know that my husband, whom I love dearly, would treat me this way. I didn't know he felt all those things, and maybe if we had talked, we could have found a solution. But he chose to be deceitful. I took his phone and turned off his alarm. Without it, he would surely oversleep, and that's exactly what happened. I packed my things and went to a hotel for the night. I couldn't stay in the house with someone like that. The next day, absolute chaos ensued. I'm sure Jan woke up to 100 missed calls from his mother and was frantically packing because he hadn't packed the day before. I suspect this because I got a call from him at 1 p.m. Where the hell are you? Why didn't my alarm go off? And why aren't you here? Oh, I decided to take a little vacation day for myself. Oh, that's nice. A little heads up would have been appreciated, though. Yeah, likewise. Seen what? What do you mean? Anyways, that doesn't matter. I'm running late for my flight. I mean, my meeting with Mom. Why are you in such a hurry? I'm sure she wouldn't mind you being a little bit late. You don't understand. Anyway, it's fine. I won't be home tonight and tomorrow night. I've got a lot I need to do. See you later. Before I could even respond, he hung up. I'm pretty sure he was so overwhelmed that he didn't even check the proper details of his ticket, which I had changed to the next day. Through the Find My iPhone app, I saw that he made his way to the airport. Imagine waking up, rushing out of the house with only minutes to spare to make it to your flight, just to find out that it had been canceled. I'm sure he was moving like a madman up and down that airport. I could almost see him frantically checking his phone, realizing the flight details were wrong. Suddenly, I received a call from Mary. What have you done? What do you mean, Mary? Drop the act. I know you tampered with our flight. If by tamper you mean change the date, then yes, that's exactly what I did. Why would you do that? I was trying to help you guys out. Didn't you say you wanted John's help with moving some stuff around? I noticed that you had the flight booked for today, the same day John was supposed to help you. So I decided to change some things. You're welcome. Johnson, come and talk to your wife before I reach through the phone and strangle her. Johnson grabbed the phone. Listen here, Nancy. I don't know what you've done, but whatever it is, stop it right now. Uncle Jack still isn't answering his phone. Try again, Mary said, her voice shaking with frustration. He isn't answering his phone because he doesn't want to speak with you too, I replied calmly. You understand us? Johnson asked, sounding shocked. Every last word. But how? I've been practicing, I said, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. I've been learning Spanish so I could communicate better with you and your mom. But now I see it also helped me uncover your plans. Johnson's face went pale. You knew all along? Yes, I heard everything. Your plans to leave me, to claim the house without me knowing. I heard it all. Johnson and Mary were silent. I could hear their heavy breathing over the phone, the shock and fear evident in their silence. So what now? Johnson finally asked. Now you deal with the consequences of your actions, I said. I already spoke to Uncle Jack. He knows everything. You won't be getting that house." "But Nancy, you don't understand," Johnson pleaded. "We had no choice. We needed that house." "You had a choice," I said firmly. "You could have been honest with me. Instead, you chose to deceive me. Now you have to live with the consequences." There was another long silence. Then Mary spoke, her voice trembling. "Nancy, we're sorry. We didn't mean for it to go this far." "It's too late for apologies," I replied. "You made your bed, now you have to lie in it." I hung up the phone and took a deep breath. It was done. I had exposed their plans and ensured they wouldn't get the house. I felt a sense of relief, but also a deep sadness. The man I loved, the family I thought I was a part of, had betrayed me. But I knew I had to move on. I packed my things and checked out of the hotel. I decided to stay with a friend for a while until I figured out my next steps. As I walked out of the hotel, I felt a mix of emotions: anger, sadness, relief, but most of all, a sense of empowerment. I had stood up for myself and taken control of the situation, and now I was ready to start a new chapter in my life, free from deceit and betrayal. "I told you, Mama. I told you she might hear us." "So that means yesterday you heard everything?" "Yep. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to divorce your good-for-nothing son and leave you two to deal with each other." "How blessed." "Stay. Oh, and next time you want to talk about someone with them right there in the room, make sure they don't understand what you're saying. Have a nice life." I hung up before they could respond. I was done with their nonsense. Later that day, I got a call from Uncle Jack. "Hello, dear. How are you?" "I'm a bit upset. I just had an ugly fight with John and Mary, and now I'm getting a divorce from him." "I'm so sorry that things turned out this way, Nancy. It's part of life, I guess. How are things on your end?" "Well, I finally spoke to them and gave them a piece of my mind. They are not happy." "What did you say to them?" "I told John that he's an idiot for treating you the way he did, and told Mary that she's evil for roping her son into her schemes. I also told them that I have given you the house." "You what?" "Yes, dear, the mansion is yours. Even if you get a divorce from John, it's all yours, and you can share it with whomever you please." I don't know what to say, Jack. It's too much. I wanted this house to go to someone kind and compassionate, but also tough and strong when needed. That's exactly who you are. A house is the least I could do after all the stress and turmoil those two put you through. The house is yours. Take it." After that call, I felt a strange mix of emotions. I had managed to distance myself from two toxic people, and on top of that, I have been given a multi-million-dollar mansion. It felt surreal, like something out of a movie, but it was real and it was happening to me. The next few days were a whirlwind. I moved my belongings into the mansion and started to make it my own. Every room, every corner became a testament to my resilience and strength. I decorated the house with a sense of newfound freedom and pride. I was no longer bound by the deceit and betrayal of Johnson and Mary. This house, this beautiful mansion, was a symbol of my victory over their treachery. As expected, Mary and Johnson were furious. They sent me constant threats, trying to intimidate me into giving up the house. But I stood my ground. Each time they sent a threat, I responded with a picture of a different part of the house, reminding them that it was mine, not theirs. I wanted them to see what they had lost, to feel the sting of their own actions. Revenge never felt so sweet. One evening, as I was sitting in the grand living room surrounded by the opulence of the mansion, I reflected on everything that had happened. I thought about how much I had loved Johnson, how I tried to learn Spanish to communicate better with him and his family. I remembered the hurtful things they had said about me, their plans to leave me out of their lives. It had been a painful journey, but I had come out stronger on the other side. I received another call from Uncle Jack. "Hello, dear. I just wanted to check in and see how you're doing." "I'm doing well, Jack. Thank you for everything. The house is beautiful. I'm glad you like it. You deserve it after everything you've been through." "I appreciate that. It means a lot to me. You know, Nancy, I've been thinking. Maybe you should consider staying in Spain for a while. You could use a change of scenery, and it might help you heal." "That's a good idea, Jack. I think I will. Thank you for the suggestion." As I hung up the phone, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The future was uncertain, but I knew I had the strength to face whatever came my way. I had overcome betrayal and heartbreak, and I had emerged victorious. This mansion was not just a house. It was a symbol of my resilience, my strength, and my ability to overcome any obstacle. In the end, I realized that the best revenge was living well. I had a beautiful home, a supportive family in Uncle Jack, and a bright future ahead of me. Mary and Johnson could stew in their own bitterness and regret, but I was moving forward with my life. And that, I knew, was the greatest revenge of all.
"I've been demoted at work," he announced somberly upon arriving home. "What?" I nearly spilled my tea in shock. His company's recent poor performance and impending restructuring had hinted at potential personnel changes, but I never anticipated it hitting Scott directly. Nevertheless, I felt it was crucial to stand by him during such trying times as his wife. "Well, perhaps it's just a stroke of bad luck. Times are tough, and I'm also working, so let's not fret," I replied, trying to maintain a cheerful demeanor. "I'm Catherine, 50 years old, currently employed full-time in the back office. I reside with my husband Scott, who is 2 years my senior, our high school sophomore daughter Julia, and my 72-year-old mother-in-law, Eel. While Eel and I may not always see eye to eye, our interactions are limited to when I'm home, since I work outside. So, I've chosen not to dwell on it. To my daughter, I advised, 'Your dad is feeling a bit down because of the demotion, but let's try to carry on as usual around him.' However, Scott began to unload his frustrations, and as the saying goes, people often vent their frustrations on those closest to them, those they trust the most. And unfortunately, I became the recipient of it all. The following day, while cleaning the hallway on my day off, he passed by and suddenly remarked, 'You've put on weight since we got married, haven't you?' Huh? Well, I'm 50 after all. Even the fancy pamphlets mention that women tend to gain weight around menopause. But according to my company's health checkup, I'm not overweight, I retorted. Then came his heartless words. Forget the health checkup. Your figure is too unsightly. You're just being lazy if you're overweight. I'm embarrassed to be seen with you and your barrel-like figure. His sudden cruelty left me speechless, and as he added ugly before retreating to his room and locking the door, I was left bewildered. What? What's happening all of a sudden? I pinched my own side in disbelief. I can pinch it when I squeeze it between my thumb and forefinger. It fits snugly, and I can tell that I've gained more than enough. But why now all of a sudden? It felt like an arrow had pierced me unexpectedly. The shock so intense that I even forgot I was holding the magician wiper in my hand, which then slipped and clattered loudly to the hallway floor. From that day onward, Scott's treatment of me grew increasingly harsh. To exacerbate matters, my mother-in-law seemed to have overheard the argument from that weekend and decided to intervene. Then tensions escalated further as I ascended the stairs with a basket of laundry intending to hang the clothes. My mother-in-law awaited me, not at the bottom, but at the top of the stairs. She would make remarks like, "Oh, how dreadful. If only you weren't so overweight, we could pass each other on the stairs. I wouldn't have to wait here because your obesity restricts the space for both of us." Moreover, during dinner when I serve fried chicken, she'd comment, "Isn't this what's contributing to your weight gain?" and promptly remove my plate. Instead, she'd suggest that only the three of us who weren't overweight should eat. My gynecologist had mentioned that after middle age, one tends to either gain weight or lose it. Yet, my mother-in-law remained on the thin side. She was as slim as a dried-up tree, but I managed to tolerate her incessant taunts. Such annoyances had become routine, so I had grown somewhat accustomed to them. What truly wounded me, however, was my husband's behavior since that incident. Scott ceased speaking to me. There were no expressions of gratitude or compliments, not even when I served him breakfast. He simply ate in silence and then left the table. He would enter and exit the bathroom without uttering a word. Though we still shared the bedroom, he would merely turn his back to me and immerse himself in his smartphone. I couldn't bear being treated as though I were invisible. One night, summoning my courage in the bedroom, I asked, "Is there a reason you're ignoring me?" His response was cold. "Not really, but I prefer not to engage with anyone other than humans." He continued, "I don't want to be associated with a family member who is this overweight. If you truly care about me, you'll shed some pounds." His words left me disheartened. But it's inevitable with age. You understand that, don't you? Even though I walk 1.2 miles for my commute, I'm doing my best in my own way. Despite my efforts to combat the weight gain that often comes with aging, he coldly turned his back, dismissing my struggles. "If you're not seeing results, then it's as if you're not trying at all. Don't speak to me anymore." And with that, he truly stopped acknowledging my presence. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law persisted in taunting me about my weight. Whenever meat, fruits, or rice were served, she questioned, "Are you permitted to eat that?" Eventually, I found myself restricted to salads and boiled vegetables. Scott remained silent throughout, merely moving his chopsticks without a word. It seemed my marriage was nearing its end. During my spare moments, I began packing my belongings. If this was the treatment I would receive from Scott, perhaps it was best to disappear altogether. When I confided in my daughter, saying, "I'm considering moving back to my parents' house," she sympathized. "I understand. I witnessed Grandma and Dad always picking on you during meals. It's painful to watch. I'll come with you, Mom. We can stay with your parents, and I can still attend high school from there. And now, tomorrow marks the beginning of the demotion I've been anticipating right after the winter break." Scott approached with a smile, suggesting, "Let's all have a drink just this once. Tomorrow, life without subordinates begins for him." I pondered whether he found this situation unbearable. However, by now I had lost the will to play along. Even his forced smile grated on my nerves. Scott piped up, "Let's enjoy a nightcap with dinner. I'll whip up some wine spritzers." It might have been the first time he had directly addressed me since the demotion announcement. He continued, "Julia can have juice, and I'll fix you a wine spritz or two, Catherine." He then placed the prepared drinks at 3 spots on the table. Odd. Why the sudden change? As Scott momentarily turned his back to search for the TV remote, I discreetly sniffed the drink he had poured. What? I detected a faint scent, unmistakably familiar. I knew it from my own culinary endeavors. How could you even think to serve me this? I refused to tolerate it any longer between my mother-in-law's constant harassment and my husband's neglect. I had reached my limit. The sight of the wine spritzer pushed me over the edge. "Scott, could you please grab the Comté cheese from the fridge? It's from the local dairy farm, and it's absolutely delicious. I'm grateful for this family time. Would you mind fetching it?" I requested, hoping he would contribute at least this much to our moment of togetherness. As Scott made his way to the fridge, I took the opportunity to swap my drink with the one on a seat to my right. It was EO's seat. Upon his return with the cheese, I announced, "Now that we have our snacks ready, I'll go fetch Julia and mother-in-law," loud enough for them to hear. "Dinner served." The two of them joined us in the dining room and took their seats, creating an appearance of a typical family dinner, except I didn't have any meatloaf or cornbread salad. Instead, we had stewed chicken soup, comb cheese, and wine spritzers. Julia opted for juice. "Let's dig in." Julia broke the silence while Scott and my mother-in-law remained silent. I took a sip of the wine spritzer Scott had prepared, noticing him watching me closely with a smile. "Yeah, it's quite good, huh?" Scott muttered something under his breath, but I chose to ignore him. Instead, I focused on my salad before taking another sip of the wine spritzer. Suddenly, a stream of red liquid shot out from my mother-in-law's mouth, resembling Godzilla's fiery breath. "Wait, Grandma, what happened?" my daughter exclaimed, rising from her seat in surprise. Some of the liquid splattered onto her salad. "Did you choke? Are you okay?" Julia quickly fetched a towel and returned it, offering it to my mother-in-law, who wiped her mouth. However, her reaction was one of disbelief. "What? What is this, Grandma?" "Your mouth. It looks like spicy cob," my daughter observed, growing increasingly concerned. "Hey, you! He put it in my drink!" my mother-in-law shrieked, attempting to grab me, but I coldly brushed her hand away. "It wasn't me. Scott made it," I stated firmly. This dismissal, coupled with the revelation of Scott's involvement, seemed to stun her. "What?" my mother-in-law screamed, her lips still stained with sauce, before turning to glare at Scott, who was visibly trembling. Leaning towards him, I exerted some pressure by resting my hand on the table. "You thought you could sneak it into the wine spritzer, didn't you? I could detect it slightly because I've encountered it before. That was a dash of hell, wasn't it?" I confronted him sternly. "A drop of hell. I picked it up at the food fair in Alabama. It might not be as renowned as Death Saucy, but with its subtle lime undertones, I found it more appealing for its homely flavor," I explained. That hint of lime was what I detected, indicating he had added a significant amount to the drink. My mother-in-law likely didn't notice due to the wine spritzer aroma, or perhaps she mistook the lime scent for part of the drink's flavor. Regardless, this was an exceptionally malicious prank. Incredibly vicious. "Wait, Dad, did you do that?" Julia's expression was one of disbelief. I actually intended for Catherine to have it," Scott admitted. "You should switch it with yours. Even if my mother-in-law is foaming at the mouth, it's out of line. Just because she realized it was meant for me, she wants to pass it off to me. I'm not touching that dangerous concoction," I asserted in a hushed tone, maintaining pressure on Scott. And then I confronted him. "Explain why on earth you thought pulling such a stunt was acceptable," I recounted. "You were putting on weight, and spicy food can boost metabolism, so I figured I'd give it a try," Scott reasoned. Pathetic. What a lame excuse, I scoffed. Did he truly believe such an explanation would suffice? It was utterly embarrassing. Under pressure, my husband hesitated, shifting his chair back slightly. "I'm not crazy. This is a legitimate reason to support your diet. Here. Swap your cup with mine and have a taste. I made it for you," he urged, closing in. I saw him retreat. "What are you implying? As the one who prepared it, you should be the one to sample it. Come on, taste it. As the one who brewed it, take some responsibility," I asserted, slamming the table. At the sound, my husband, perhaps hoping to evade further confrontation, rose from his chair and stepped back amidst the tense silence. A soft voice broke through. Both my husband and I turned to the source. It was our daughter, Julia. She began to speak, her words sounding strained, as if she were forcing them out. "Taking out your frustration on Mom, who supports you the most when work gets tough, and subjecting her to repeated cruel treatment, it's like a childish prank. I might not be supposed to say this to my parents, but it's too immature and unbearable to witness." Our daughter stood up, addressing her father directly. Is it wrong to struggle with weight? Mom wakes up early, walks to work, and even packs her own lunch, so it's not fair to say she's not making an effort, she continued, turning to face her grandmother. And you, going along with it, taking away Mom's dinner like the fried chicken incident. What Grandma is doing is reminiscent of high school drama. It's embarrassing, she remarked firmly. At these words, a flustered eel began to offer a confused excuse. I am just concerned about Julia's mom not gaining any more weight. I want her to feel positively about herself in front of her granddaughter. Besides, I feel like Julia is also struggling with weight. But Julia remained resolute. Compassion is about understanding and supporting the other person. It pains me to see Mom's dinner taken away, especially when she looks so upset. That's not compassion. Mom hasn't had any health issues in her checkups yet. Taking away her food is just plain mean. Ethel fell silent, and it appeared Julia was finished addressing her for the time being. She turned her attention back to her father. Mom goes to the gynecologist regularly and stays active, yet Dad just brushes her aside because she's gained a bit of weight. What's up with that? His indifference creates such tension in the house, can't you see it? Even Colonel Sanders and Aunt Stella from the cookie ads are on the plump side. Ever heard of happy weight? If Mom becomes a lovely grandmother like Aunt Stella as she gets older, I'd be overjoyed. When I have kids and she's a grandma, wouldn't it be wonderful to say, Mom, you've reached some happy weight, and share a laugh? That's my dream. Please don't ruin it for me, she stated matter-of-factly. Her gaze, despite their blunt delivery, her words warmed my heart like hot milk with cookies. It was pitiful to witness a father admonished by his own daughter. And one more thing, she addressed her father directly. If you're going to disregard someone because of weight gain from a ging, remember, with your receding hairline, you could easily be overlooked yourself. The tension in the room was palpably. Her sharp words left a chill in the air, making the living room feel as cold as ice. It seemed she had said all she needed to. Afterward, she turned to me. That's enough, Mom. It's time to let it go. It'll be better for you. Her words caught me off guard. Let it go? Yes, I should let it go. As I mentioned earlier, my dream is to see you hold my child, saying, "You've gained some happy weight," and sharing a laugh. For my sake, I want you to be happy, because that's part of my dream. So please let it go, be happy, and fulfill my dream. Her words filled my heart with warmth. Each word she spoke brought me such joy that I no longer cared about being ignored by my husband, the fat-shaming from my mother-in-law, or the drink incident. Warm tears streamed down my cheeks. Yes, you're right, I agreed, my vision blurred with tears. Come on, Mom. She patted my back gently, urging me forward. Oh, okay, I mumbled as I fetched a document I had been concealing for some time. What? My husband exclaimed, startled after enduring a month of being ignored. I reached a decision. I have my bags packed. Let's go our separate ways, I declared, presenting the divorce papers with only my name written on them. I just wanted you to lose some weight. If you had slimmed down as I asked, I would have been satisfied. It wasn't until Julia pointed it out that I realized it was venting. But since you didn't shed any pounds, I thought I'd torment you further. I didn't mean for it to... I didn't expect this outcome, my husband confessed, panic creeping into his voice. Those who failed to notice until things escalated are the ones acting incredibly immature, Julia retorted sharply. Living without her beloved granddaughter is no laughing matter for my mother-in-law, Ethel interjected softly, her voice as gentle as stroking a cat. Julia, dear, you wouldn't want to keep living with us, your grandmothers? Julia shut down Ethel's plea with a firm refusal. I decline. I no longer wish to share the same space as people who behave like middle schoolers. Wait, okay, hold on. I understand. I'll taste it as you suggest. I'll take responsibility as the one who prepared it, Scott conceded, picking up the glass before him and downing its contents in one gulp. Scott, much like Ethel earlier, ejected a stream of the red liquid from his mouth, leaving him with a set of lobster-like lips. "There, see? I took responsibility, didn't I?" Scott proudly declared. Julia captured a picture of them both with their lobster lips on her phone and remarked, "You both are so ridiculous, Mom. Let's go," before swiftly exiting the living room. "Yeah, I'll follow her lead," I agreed. Left behind is a dinner table splattered here and there with the wine cocktail mixed with a drop of hell, along with a husband and mother-in-law sporting red lobster lips. I return to my parents' house with Julia. Upon explaining the situation at home, both my mother and father are enraged and decide to confront Scott and Ethel. They return with the divorce papers, and I ultimately end up getting divorced. My ex-husband's career hits rock bottom with no notable achievements in his remaining years. It turns out he had a habit of ignoring issues he disliked, even with his subordinates, which ultimately led to his demotion, a revelation I only recently discovered. Meanwhile, my ex-mother-in-law, Ethel, who had been difficult and seldom ventured outside, finds herself in a stalemate within their two-person household. Eventually, I received a call saying, "Things wouldn't be so dull if you and Julia were here." This sentiment is underscored by the 17 years that passed since Julia was born and we lived together. Please come back. I'll stop ignoring you, but I won't be returning. Enjoy indulging while you can. Once you have grandchildren, you'll have more physical work to do, my mother jokes with a smile. That's a good point. Today, like every day, I'm walking to work. Along the way, my boss drives by and stops the car, offering, "Need a ride?" "No, thank you," and sticking to my diet. "Just get in, Catherine," he insists. "I found a new boyfriend," I announce proudly. Both of us have experienced divorce, which has strengthened our bond and mutual understanding. Dee is great and all, but being late would pose a problem, he mentions as he drives. "I've never been late before," I retort, puffing up my cheeks defensively. He glances at me and gently pokes my puffed-up cheek with his finger. "Give me the time you save by riding in a car today for our conversation," he says with a playful smile, ever the chatty boyfriend.